First and foremost, just kind of tell me a little bit about your career.
My career. Wow. Uh, as an economist,
Yes, sir.
well, since I've been at this for a while, um, where would you like me to start? What would you like me to emphasize?
Well, I guess we could start with just what drove you to want to get into this profession.
So when I was an undergraduate, I was trying to choose a major, and I actually couldn't make up my mind at the time between political science and economics, and I ended up majoring in both. Uh, but when time came for me to consider what I was going to do after college, um, I was pretty clear that I didn't want to be a lawyer, which is what a lot of the folks who had majored in political science were choosing to do. I didn't want a business career because that was somewhat inconsistent with the kinds of values that I had. Um, and um, so I settled on the possibility of becoming an academic. And that was partly influenced by the fact that my father already was an academic, um, but his field was public health rather than either economics or political science. Uh, but then I ultimately had to make a decision which field it was I was going to choose to try to do graduate work. And I ultimately decided that it was more important to do it in economics because I was primarily interested in trying to better understand inequality and what to do about it. Uh, and since that was going to be my focus, it struck me that I would have more leverage to talk about those issues if I was a trained economist. Uh, so, uh, it's interesting. I as when I first began to major in economics uh, at Brown, I didn't really like what I was hearing. I was not convinced that what the economists were saying about the causes of poverty and the causes of inequality, the causes of essentially economic inequities and inequalities. I wasn't convinced by what the economists were saying at the time was the explanation for it. And so, with the hubris of youth, I said, well, I'm going to become an economist so I can change the way they think about things. So that was a little bit absurd of me. Uh, I haven't changed the way the economics profession thinks, uh, but I think I have had the impact on some folks, ways in which they think about these kinds of issues. And I think broadly across the social sciences, a lot of my work has had an impact. Um, but I haven't transformed the economics profession single-handedly, and I certainly should not have expected to be able to do that.
We all come in with major aspirations to and hope that there is a change that comes to it. But what are some of the things that you feel like you have been able to change, or at least try to influence people towards your mode of thinking?
I think I've had some impact on not only folks, some of the people who are also academics, but also kind of a wider impact in terms of policymakers, members of the general public at large. I think I've had some impact in terms of introducing some policies that I think are bold and potentially transformative, and finally, having the opportunity to see people take them seriously. Uh, and that would include something that I truly didn't expect when I first started working on the topic, reparations. I certainly didn't expect us to be having a conversation at this point uh, where at least people are taking the idea seriously, or a large number of people are taking the idea seriously rather than dismissing it outright.
And I saw that you were a co-author for a book from last year, From Here to Equality: Reparations for Black Americans in the 20th Century. Just what?
It's actually in the 21st century.
Okay, my apologies there.
Yeah,
But
it's okay.
please explain the importance of reparations in the Black community.
From my standpoint, if we are talking about the years and years, decades and decades of injustices that have been heaped upon Black Americans, the only possible means of engaging in some form of redress for those harms is a reparations plan, and it's a reparations plan that should be designed for Black Americans who had at least one ancestor who was enslaved in the United States.
As far as compensation, how do you feel like this should be administered? The possible amount and things of that nature.
In our book, From Here to Equality, we place the focus on the objective of a reparations plan being to eliminate the racial wealth difference in the United States, or the racial wealth gap, as people customarily refer to it. That gap amounts to approximately $840,000 to $850,000 per household in the United States. That's an estimate that's been generated by the Survey of Consumer Finances, which is administered every 3 years by the Federal Reserve Board. So the most recent version of the Survey of Consumer Finances to be made public is the survey that was taken in 2019, and it's during that year that we get the estimate per household of about $840,000 to $850,000. And that corresponds to a situation where, if we estimate that Black American descendants of persons enslaved in the U.S. are about 13% of the nation's population, they own less than 2.5% of the nation's wealth. Under those circumstances, it's straightforward for us to argue that a reparations plan should, at minimum, eliminate that differential so that the share of wealth that Black Americans hold, Black Americans whose ancestors were enslaved here, the share of wealth that they hold should reach the same proportionate share as their presence in the population. And so we would move the Black share of wealth from less than 2.5% to closer to 13%. And that would require an expenditure of at least $10 to $12 trillion. And so that's what establishes the baseline for our estimate of the magnitude of a reparations bill.